standing for a moment of silence for our sick, handicapped, military personnel recently departed our community. Thank you. Anybody wants to speak?
No one signed in.
No one signed in. Well, I'm done. Joe Kyle, the floor is yours.
All right, so you have a budget packet there in front of you guys. It includes a couple handouts. One's the actual budget report, a larger spreadsheet that is the numbers, which will follow, so it keeps us handy, and then an actual budget actual for where we are currently. So I'll just do a quick review in the book, and then we'll bounce to the spreadsheet. As I go, if you guys have questions, stop me, and I'll pretty much go line by line if there's pertinent changes or stuff that's noteworthy, and we'll go from there. To summarize the 2025 budget, this process started back in August. I reached out back to mid-August to all the council members, all the department heads, all the nonprofit organizations we have relationships with that have a budgetary tie, asking for their input. I received that input, and essentially it's everyone's wish list, and that's what was used to develop the budget we have before you. It took me 2 months to put it together. Middle of last month, we had Finance Committee meeting and reviews of the Finance Committee. Finance Committee had a couple of questions and amendments that we were able to implement. Once the Finance Committee said the draft's good to go, we put it out to you guys 2 weeks ago so that you had ample time coming into tonight's meeting so that everyone was up to speed. Tonight's was a special council meeting, was advertised in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette last week so that the community knows about it. Going into 2025, we have a balanced spending plan that has no tax increase proposed. It's all funds combined, about $8.1 million. The general fund, which is the fund that operates most of the day-to-day operations of the municipality, is going up about 4%. A lot of that revenue is attributed to two things: earned income tax and state aid to the borough's pension plans. It's interesting is that the next year, sewer revenue is going to exceed real estate tax revenue for the first time. I remember when I started this 20 years ago, ever since, you're in the sewer business, and then it really is, you are in the sewer business when we're bringing more sewer revenue than tax revenue, and next year is that mark. To summarize 2024, there's been a lot that we've accomplished in 2024 as a community, and I know I take pride in it, and I know you do as well. And it's a nice little year-end report to share with your neighbors in the community what was able to be accomplished. And I'll just highlight some. We adopted a new comprehensive plan, secured over $1 million in grants. We're recognized by the county as a banner community. We partnered with Public Art Visual for the 3rd year of the Outdoor Sculpture Exhibition. We provided all households in the borough with a new 32-gallon recycle cart. We assisted the fire company with additional funding to replace all their air packs, the SCBA equipment. Provided additional funding to the library for Library Month, which is $4,000 that got matched. We created a unique partnership with the Historical Society that enabled them to raise $2,500 by giving them all our Wall Street signs. We partnered with Upper St. Clair to do, it's in the works, a feasibility and constructability study for the roundabout that's proposed at Lesnett, Mayview, Bank, and Chartiers. Advanced commercial redevelopment in the borough, there's new construction on Commercial Street. Purchased new public works equipment, including a new dump truck, utility truck, brush and leaf collection boxes. We held 2 successful household hazardous waste collection events. We implemented multiple recommendations of the 2022 Active Transportation Plan. We completed a pretty, for a community our size, a sizable road paving program this year where we paved Center Street, Osceola, Universal, Gilmore, Darby, Schulte, Irwin, and the bottom of Bank Street. We're investing heavily in our sanitary sewer system. We did a very large lining project and point repair project that did sizable linear footage of sewer within the borough. We invested on Center Street and replaced a troublesome block of sanitary sewer in that area. We completed the landslide repairs on Warner Avenue that built a very large retaining wall and put storm sewers, guardrail, fencing up along Warner. And interesting, that project was pretty much 100% funded by grants, partnering with our federal stimulus money and the gaming money. We kind of sharpened our skills in-house with storm sewer repairs, and we did extensive storm sewer repairs and catch basin replacements essentially throughout the whole borough. We installed the first phase of the downtown wayfinding and parking lot improvement signage project. Made continued improvements to the borough building. Flood mitigation work. We secured all the easements and the permits necessary for phase 1 of the flood control project. Back in April, we were flooded 2 times. That caused extensive damage and cleanup down Chartiers Park, and that's been addressed. Parks and Recreation, we continue to improve our parks. We finished construction of the McLaughlin Run Playground this year. We reconstructed the basketball courts and the pickleball court at Cook School. We continue to host a series of community events. Working with the State Department of Conservation and Natural Resources, we did the Meadow Project at McLaughlin Run. We had 2 tree planting programs at community events this year. One in the spring did 17 trees at Cook School, and one here in 2 weeks at right-of-way areas throughout the town. To highlight the 2025, this is like the coffee talk with if you're like, where's my tax dollars going next year? 2025 budget starts the construction of the phase 1 of the flood control project, puts money in place to purchase a mini excavator for the Public Works Department, continues the sizable road paving program. Active transportation improvements are going to continue throughout the borough. Consulting services to make amendments to the zoning ordinance, replace a police cruiser, continue to make investments in a sanitary sewer system, and continue the increases which we've been doing over the past couple of years to the Bridgeville Library Fire Company and Southbridge EMS. So to go over to the general fund, if we could bring the worksheets up in front of us now. So to start off, page 1, these are the revenues. So as I go, please feel free to just say stop to have a question. Earned real estate taxes, millages remain the same. That's 8 years at this same tax rate. Interesting, the Finance Committee was asking, how do we look into the future? How long can we sustain keeping taxes unchanged? Because knowing this year we had a couple significant legal matters that were before us, raising costs with everything, and we're still able to end the year in the black. So that's not going to go on forever, just because the climate isn't the same as it was 10 years ago. I'm putting a 5-year spreadsheet together, and I finished it. I just wanted to give it to the committee, and it is looking good for another this year and maybe even next year that we can kick the can. It's just now, how do we have that philosophical conversations? How do you incrementally increase it after that so that you don't have the perceptions that our neighbors were dealing with? So that's something that the Finance Committee can start talking about, that we have that ready to go. But for real estate taxes, we call them section 301, so 01, 301. 301s are our real estate taxes. No change, kind of keeping everything the same. Bottom line for the department is $1.8 million. Now into the Act 511 taxes. These are earned income tax, mercantile tax, business privilege tax, local services tax. This is where we see the growth. If you look at the second one, 310, 210, earned income tax current year, it has an increase about, between the two of them, $45,000. So it's a sizable increase where we're seeing growth every year with the bottom line of people's paychecks equal higher earned income tax. There is increases, as you see, in business privilege tax, and the prior years are pretty much getting caught up, so that's why you see the forecast of a decrease in some of those prior years. Real estate transfer tax, I show a decrease. This year, if you look at prior years, the home sales in the borough were booming here, and this year the market kind of, well, not crashed, but stopped. But we're seeing that start up. Like I sign off on dye test certifications for home sales, and the number of dye test certifications we've had over the past month is probably more than I had all year. And I'm seeing thankfully. But I'm seeing that start up again, where I think when that rate started to come down, you see home sales resuming. So next year, I have it coming down 5,000 for overall, but I feel confident that we're going to hit the $90,000 on real estate transfer tax. So overall, Act 511 tax is about $1,083,000. Now we start going into departmental earnings. A couple noteworthy things here. Street openings, we continue to just be diligent on, so it shows an increase of $1,500 there. Parks, we had a big boost in park rentals since the playgrounds have been updated. There isn't a weekend where there's not Saturday and Sunday are rented, so we see an increase in park rentals, and I don't see why that would stop next year.
That's because everywhere else has gone up.
Probably.
A lot of people have told me that other rental halls and venues have gone up. So
Yeah, they're
good and bad.
cheap.
Yeah.
$60 for a resident, which is great. Mechanical devices, I showed going down $2,000, essentially just because that was the permit fees paid by the accounting club. They're just not open anymore. There was. That's perfect. So going into fines and forfeitures, rather the same status quo for 24 to 25, no change. Interest earnings on the general fund, I show it budgeted the same, but essentially that's starting to come down, but the budget was already conservative, so that's why that stayed at the $25,000 mark. Going in for fire insurance, this is the Firemen's Relief Association pass-through from the state, that kind of stays the same. In the middle of this page, you'll see the big increase, which is state pension aid. It's $51,000 next year, and that's calculated by the actuary. We're at the point where it goes, you have two ways to calculate what the state gives the borough for pension aid. You have need-based and unit-based. Unit-based is where you get more money basis the need. The way that the funds were performing, we're transferring to unit-based, so we will get the full allocation is what he's anticipating. So that's what shows the state aid for the pension funds at $176,000, which is an increase of $51,000. So between earned income tax and this state aid, it takes up most of the increase going into next year. Continuing on, the 1% RAD tax that the borough gets shows a $5,000 increase. You can see where that overall is increasing here and staying on course. So overall departmental totals for intergovernmental entitlements is $414,000, an increase of $55,000. There really is nothing more notable on the bottom of this page. Going into the last page for general fund revenue, notable items here is increases in contributions for Dale on the Avenue, and the biggest change here is the way that the sewer fund reimburses the general fund for public works time, and my wages and the assistant's wages is essentially 15%. And like I started this whole conversation off is that we're essentially in the sewer business, and that's no exaggeration that more than 15% of my time and 15% of the public works time is dedicated to sewer services. So that's where you see the 15% mark. And that brings up the increase between all those staffers, brings in about $35,000 more. So bottom line for the general fund, revenue is $3.8 million, an increase of $149,000 for the year. Before I go into expenditures, any questions on general fund revenue? All right, so matching general fund revenue, expenditures are going to be equal, so that's the balance. So in and out is going to be balanced, that's the forecast. So changes here, the borough has two union collective bargaining agreements, Public Works and the police. Those are in year 4 of a 5-year agreement. Each year had a 3-year wage increase. The practice was that the non-uniform personnel that aren't party to the collective bargaining agreement match the wage increase. So you see wages going up across 3% for those staffers as well. There really is no other changes within the administration other than the wage increase of 3%. It did show there's an increase in our copier maintenance agreement, and that agreement expires next year. We're going to try shopping that because it's just getting to be too expensive. Money is still allocated to send a delegation to the AWOM conference and money for staffing, for staff to take necessary training courses. So general government increase is $7,500. No change with the treasurer and the auditing. Next year is year 4 of a 4-year agreement with the auditor at $9,000. Going into tax collection, I did increase the refund on real estate, knowing what the unknown refunds are on what you've been probably following with on the county level, the common level ratio they call it on assessment. So I increased that by $5,000, knowing that we'll have something come in. It's just until we have reassessments, that's going to be what we deal with. So tax collection shows an increase of $5,500, so for $35,700. Legal fees. 2 things here to point here. No change really is assessed to what I forecast for next year, but for 2024, I show us ending significantly over budget compared to prior years, and it's essentially for what we had to deal with back earlier in the year that took a toll on the legal budget.
Is that why the legal fees of the solicitor appears to be going down?
It's not going down. The budget is going to be the same, but what I forecast the end of year at. So if you looked at these columns, I should explain it. I apologize. So when you look at the spreadsheet, 21, 22, 23 are actual numbers. Those are what were audited numbers that give you a trend for me to predict from. The middle columns are 2024. The first 24 column is the budget for the year. So you can see the solicitor budget was $45,000, and then the budget for 25 is still $45,000. But the actual and the year-end forecast is what's higher because we had the storms earlier in the year that caused that increase.
Gotcha.
Now, going into the next page, insurances and employee benefits is where there's probably the most notable increase. Our health insurance is going up 6% next year, but the increase of $76,000 wasn't necessarily the 6% increase. We had 3 employees that were brought on as single that now went to family and spouses. The cost of those change of life plans really take a bite. Well, so that's what that is there. Workers' comp is going up $4,700. A lot of that is payroll driven. Some of it was the mod on one class here, but essentially a lot of that was payroll driven. So the big hit there was the health insurance with the change of life there. Going into the next group, 407s, this is our runs the computers, programs and stuff here. Really no big changes, everything's still the same. There's an upgrade of the police secretary's computer. We have program costs to operate the accounting software on our E-code, internet service to the parks, for the security cameras in the borough building, running up a website, and just general IT service. Last week, it's something that we didn't budget for, but we do have a contingency line item that can address it. Joe has brought up the need for cybersecurity, protection and insurance. We've been running that risk for forever. The climate is changing that we should have some cybersecurity insurance. The Chamber of Commerce did a really nice program here at the Borough Building last week. I reached out to our insurance agent to get a quote on cybersecurity insurance. The application was rather high-tech, where I need to get our IT guy to help me fill it out, probably half of it. So I won't have that number probably just going into the December council meeting. But knowing the 407 is keeping in line with IT, that's something that we're going to have to keep in mind with the changing world.
Premium's not cheap either.
you know.
We asked other local communities around us, what's it look like, Joe or Joe?
It was,
Are we along with them, or?
we're kind of along with them, but the temperature's changing and people are trying to do what we're doing now.
Okay.
I went to the Erie conferences with my bank hat on, not the borough hat, but I was swapping back and forth because I kept going inside, and there was a gentleman that did a really, really good program, and he asked, does everybody have insurances? And half the people, maybe not even half. And then do you have, just ask these different questions, and I'm like, poor Joe, he had a long email list of different things just to ask, because I didn't know the answer, and it's just like, here's a perfect example. Do you educate your employees and do quarterly trainings? Well, that popped up because my employer does that. And I'm like, oh, well, and he says, well, if you don't, it's not keeping the security aspect, like clicking on that link that's a hacker and throw a virus on your computer. If you don't do those trainings, it doesn't keep it in your head to think twice before you click on something. So, like, those are some of the ideas I sent to Joe, and I guarantee on that questionnaire, they're asking, are you doing some of those things?
Yeah,
So
we need
those
to
are
get
things that,
ahead of that.
There's a lot of government entities, and in particular school districts, that have been ransomed
yep.
with, and so it's only a matter of time for some of the locales here, so I think it's a great idea.
And even if you just think low-hanging fruit, look how some of our officials had an email spoof this year, you know?
Yeah.
So who would ever thought?
Mayor Betty,
Yeah.
inviting us all over the place.
So,
It's like $500.
Did you get my check?
Did we apply for a grant for laptops?
we did.
Okay,
There was a state program that Jason
right,
found.
right. I mean, so at least, the hardware part of it.
Well, but you gotta
Easy.
have all the,
Yeah,
all
but
that
yeah, you're gonna
protection
have
and all that
VPNs
stuff.
and all that
Yeah,
other
sure.
stuff, yeah, so.
So that's like coming down the pike. So that's really important to that one. The next grouping is important to talk about is engineering.
I'm sorry, Joe, can I interrupt one second?
Yeah.
How is your confidence level with the IT company that we have, that
Good.
will be able to support a lot of that?
I hope so.
Okay.
They're very diligent. Every time we have an issue, they either jump on and remotely, or they actually come to the office. They're very good.
Okay,
They never let us down. So
okay, good. So were they surprised with the questionnaire?
we didn't get to them yet.
Oh, okay, all right.
Yeah. Okay, so the next group is engineering. So 408. So this is what I wanted to discuss with the group. Regular general engineering, 408-123, no change. Budget 75,000 for the general fund. Flood engineering is where I show a change. So this year, originally I budgeted $45,000 for flood engineering. But essentially, we're on track to end the year at $150,000 paid for flood engineering. A lot of that can be paid for out of the awarded project grants. So we have right now a contract ready to go with the state grant that can pay for a lot of the flood engineering. But I don't know what the bids are going to be like for the actual project. So I don't want to start drawing down on these grants, because we know at the end of the day, there is going to be some municipal money going into that project. So I'm hoping it's like pay now, pay later kind of thing. So essentially, if you've seen it over the past ages here, we run a surplus tax season, we put the money into our savings funds at those capital projects. And essentially what we'd be doing here is run a surplus, goes to capital project, goes to the flood project. So instead of drawing down the grants and just inflating the bottom line to do the shuffle, I'm hoping to just leave this here, don't touch the grants, and that when we know, hopefully in the middle of next year, what projects are, we can either do two things: use it all for the construction, or if they come in better, we can seek reimbursement for that. So that's why you see this number so high. And then next year you see 0 for flood engineering, because we're going to pay for all the flood engineering next year out of the project grants. So that's the big change with the engineering code. And you'll see this $100,000 over number when we get to the bottom of the general fund to go over year-end forecasts. And then going now into municipal property, so 409s. The only thing that's really pertinent of a change here is an increase in building maintenance. It's $11,000 to do all the repointing work around the building. You probably noticed a lot of the bricks are falling, the mortar joints are opening hard. So I reached out to R&R, and they gave us a proposal to do the pointing work around the building of $11,000. I could probably shop around, but I just went to Tony because that's what he did for the past several other projects here. So that's that number. Going into the police department for next year. Again, police chief, I show matching the collective bargaining agreements like everyone else at the 3% increase, and then everyone else has year 4 of the 5-year agreement at 3% increase. Longevity just goes up with the time that folks have here. Increases, the police department had a couple requests for next year, and we were able to pretty much do all of them but one. Replace a police cruiser, we did, and over the past 5 years, we got into a nice cycle where we've been doing this year police car, next year public works truck, next year police car, and we've been flip-flopping. So next year is a police car year, so replace a police cruiser, it replaces a 2017 Ford, so it makes sense. He asked for security cameras, or essentially, we have the intersection camera here at Bower Hill Road, putting security cameras at Presley Road and at Chartier Street so that they can pull up if something happens. So that's included within the budget. There was a couple of long guns that needed replaced. That was included in the budget. Funding to send an officer to a certain training class, I put that in the budget as well. And replace the police clerk's computer. There was a request for office furniture to be replaced. It was just a high number, and with all the big requests, I couldn't do it. That's the only thing I could get, but at the end of the year, if things come in under budget or the contingency isn't used, we can start doing that as we go. But essentially, out of all the requests we had, we were able to hit pretty much everything here. So if you look at actual wages, imagine 3% across the board. And then going down, you'll see certain increases as you go. There was one thing that's worth mentioning. If by chance there is like a staff change within the department, what you would bring in a new person at versus the top pay of a top employee, that the new person comes in at 70%. So you would be able to save about $27,000 if someone came in at the bottom. So that would make up a large payout if there was a retirement in January.
For how long do they remain at that 70%?
It goes 8 months at 70, and then it goes up 10% over 2 years.
Yeah.
Mhm. But it's rather essentially a year. Yes.
So then as far as your budget numbers, it's a wash.
Yes. But if by chance there was a hire and you went outside of the department, we would just have to be cognizant of that at the end of the year, that something would have to even out. But like perfect storm, it equals out. Just keep that in mind. There isn't, other than this couple things I talked about, the police department operates status quo. It goes up about $60,000 next year. There was some ins and outs that kind of make the balance, like the increase for a new car next year, but we don't have to buy bulletproof vests, so that's why it shows the decrease of $11,000 under body armor.
What's the telephone reduction? That's just 410, 321.
It's just what it costs. I couldn't even, I couldn't even explain it. But you can see we were budgeted much higher than what they came in at. To be honest with you, I know that we got into an agreement with Comcast, and I think one of the lines went over into Comcast, and that's what brought that down, and I just never had the budget reflect it because it was so minimal until we caught up. But great question.
Thank you.
Any questions on police department before we go on? Okay, going into the fire department, there was an increase from Southbridge EMS to have our contribution go up $4,700, essentially paying $5.42 per capita. They provided a cost budget for their operations next year that asked for $5.42 from every citizen in Bridgeville and South Fayette. Meanwhile, Cecil was still paying higher, but he didn't feel that that was equitable, that we could afford that. So this is what the Southbridge is asking for next year, of $4,700 more, to bring out to be a little under $25,000. Keeping that $4,700 in theme, $4,600 has been increased to the fire company and to the library next year, so that we can keep up their rising costs are reflected as well. So fire company is proposed to go up $4,600. Fire plugs, PA American raised the cost of the fire hydrants in the borough, so that's what that number went up $2,900 almost. Foreign fire insurance is a pass-through from the state, and we passed that over to their relief association, and I just went over EMS, so fire and EMS is going up about $13,000 next year. No change essentially in building and zoning. The only thing here is you'll see consulting services of $10,000. That is the match to the downtown zoning grant if we get the grant. Going into Public Works Department, the foreman, you'll see a 3% increase to the foreman's salary. And going over into the next page, it shows an increase of $3,000 for Public Works overtime. This overtime is essentially all the weekend park rentals and everything that's outside of snow call-outs. When we rent out the parks on the weekend, we have an employee come in and clean the parks each morning. So when there's park rentals both Saturday and Sunday, it increased the Public Works overtime. Public Works overtime was also high this year with all the flooding that we had in April that had a big hit.
Question on the parks, now that we have internet at Chartiers, is there any talk of automation with opening the park gate? I still want the cops down there at night because we never know who's down there, but.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know how that would work, or if we have snow, you just don't send anyone.
I don't
I
know.
don't know if that's something, I know we never had internet before.
Mhm.
I know that was talked of, this is
Yeah.
years ago, people were.
We can find out. I don't know.
I don't know what to say, if the park rentals are up, it won't matter too much, but.
No, 'cause you still got a guy cleaning the bathrooms
Yeah.
and stuff. But I understand there's always been a
Especially
question.
you offered to clean them at the end of the night too. Losing team.
So, and then you'll see capital purchases, it goes down $17,000. Within you'll see within Public Works, $15,000 budgeted for capital purchases. Last year, that $15,000 was in the police department, and we replaced tasers. So now the capital purchase for small equipment goes to Public Works, and it's requested to buy a brush hog attachment for the mini excavator to do behind guardrails, the walking trails, the right-of-ways. Something that we essentially borrow a sidearm mower from our neighboring towns. So Public Works shows a decrease in $12,000, essentially because the capital purchase got shifted to the police department. Going into snow removal, I still budget for a bad winter. Lord forbid if we need it or not, but we budget for it. We budget for 900 tons of salt, even though I contractually we're not obligated to 900 tons because you have to give an estimate of what we're going to buy next year. Knowing what we had on hand, I believe I only put in for like under 300 tons, which is nothing, essentially because we were overkill, and I still have an order I can put in the end of this year that we have on promissory note to the salt company. So the salt price actually went down a little bit. That's why it's down $1,200 because the contract price went down, and it went down on a fuel escalator. It has a fuel escalator on it, and that's why it went down a little bit. Overtime, I kept the number at the same, even though if you look at 23, there's only $3,800 worth of Public Works snow call-out overtime, and then even this year, we're only at $6,000 for snow call-outs, and we budget $20,000. So they're not getting the snow call-out overtime.
The mini excavator, is it, I went through that, I didn't see it.
It's in the sewer fund.
Okay,
We'll get to it.
okay.
Yeah. So the attachment is in the general fund because the attachment is not sewer related.
Right, I understand.
So that's, good point. Now going down, continuing down, like signs and traffic paint, I still keep a decent high budget. so that we continue doing the wayfinding and those improvements throughout town. Street lighting, there really is no change. Everything's kind of holding steady is what we've been budgeting. MS4 permit, we budget $40,000, and a lot of this is essentially concrete, so just little concrete to do catch basins.
And that form they got really worked out.
Oh, it's nice.
You don't have to dig rock, you know.
No.
You just board and take it down, take it down.
Yeah, it brings us on to a good point where we used to brick all our catch basins. Now our catch basins are poured in place, so they'll last ages. Going out compared to the bricks. So it has a little bit of cost front of concrete, but down the road it's saving us big time. Continuing on, vehicle maintenance and repairs, no change, same budget, $25,000. Public works wages, that goes up 3%, so it reflects that. There's a sizable budget of about $4,200 that we have for just maintenance of the avenue, and that's the flower beds and the flower baskets and the garland and such that you have at Christmas time. So that's what that line item is. Miscellaneous sidewalk work, $10,000. Our guys are now pretty skilled enough that we were doing sidewalk work, so we've been seeing them do little repairs around town. We used to contract that out. Now that's for material. We still keep a budget in place for guardrail and tree work. So that section is $303,000. Going into parks, there's no changes proposed. Our park budget has been rather the same for several years now, but we live within our means and it works out. The last line within parks is capital purchases. So we budget $10,000. And this could be used for Baldwin Street lot repurposing. So if you had a park-related project coming from Baldwin Street, this funding could be used for that. Allocation to the library, I showed going up $4,500. And it's an accomplishment for accounts if you look at it. In 2021, the borough gave $22,000 to the library. In 2025, we almost doubled it. We're at $39,500 to the library. So we're doing what we can to over time to keep increasing that to help them with that. Going into the pensions and municipal obligations to those, I went over it at the September meeting. The increase to the non-uniform plan is going up $23,000, but there was a decrease for the actuary to the police plan. Insurances, our police professional false arrest insurance. Our agent suggested that we should expect a 10% premium increase, so I budgeted that. It shows a decrease essentially because the premium went down this year, so the 10% is off of the premium and not the budget. Auto and general liability, our agent is suggesting a 5% increase we should expect, and that was budgeted. And public officials, he suggested, anticipated 10% increase, so that was budgeted. There's no changes to the contribution to the flood control authority. Going into reserve contingencies, we budget a little under $12,000. $6,500 of this is our allocation to Public Art Bridgeville for the outdoor sculpture exhibition. And then our debt is the 2021 municipal note we took out through Brentwood Bank that did pretty much all of the improvements that you saw around town. And that's a 2% loan, that's a 15-year note. So that's our payments to that. Expenditures is balanced $3.8 million. Now, before we leave the general fund, if you look in the middle of the page to 2024, the 2024 year-end forecast, I show us ending the year about $22,000. And if you remember back to my conversation about flood engineering, that's 105. So essentially, we're on track. If you were to reimburse the grant, about $125,000 in the black for the year. So we're doing good. And my numbers are typically conservative. I budget conservatively because this is just a good educated guess, you know. So as you can see, we've been very prudent with our financial management. That we've had six-figure surpluses every year, and that's been enabling us to do substantial, but the taxpayers should be proud of that, because we do a lot of capital improvements here that we don't come to general fund for, and it's how we,
It's a good thing for the grants.
and we carve a lot of fat out of the budget so that we are able to run a surplus that we are able to put into the capital project fund, because that's how we fund our capital projects, is for being cheapos, you know? Frugal, yeah, yeah. And I feel like this number here, 22, it's probably conservative, but it's again in the black. And like I said earlier, it could be the six-figure, but it's just about we're paying now and paying later on the flood project. And I'm nervous on the flood project until a bid's in hand, because I don't know what that's going to come. There's a lot coming. So that's the general fund. It's nice where no tax increase, 8 years at the same millage. Service level is at the same, if not improved. This year we increased staffing within the police department. We don't have part-time policemen anymore. That should have been in the year-end report, to be honest with you. That's a big thing, you know. We're continuing our increases to the emergency services, the library, and our parks are where our people kind of want them to be, and we keep improving. So that's the general fund. Any questions before we go to sewer?
It's a lot for one square mile.
There's a lot for one square mile. It's a little city. Yep. So if you had to go to the sewer fund, in the book itself is page 24, 25. And sewer fund is very similar to the general fund. Sewer fund has a sewer budget of $2.4 million, using $479,000 of a fund balance. The fund balance in the sewer fund as of 1/1 is expected to be $1.6 million. As you can see, this year in '24, I projected to use $400,000 of that fund balance to avoid a rate increase for the borough's sewer users. If you see the year in forecast, we're not going to use any of that. So the fund balance in the sewer funds can continue to grow. So budget conservatively, I'm asking for $479,000 of the fund balance to be used to balance the sewer fund budget rather than increase the borough portion. As we go throughout the year, we're not going to use all that up, but worst case, it's allocated for. Sewer revenue, the Alcosan did a 5-year rate increase where their rates are going up 7% next year. So a 7% Alcosan increase is a 4.5% overall rate increase. So your sewer fee currently is $17.87 per 1,000 gallons with a $7.80 per month Alcosan service charge. With a 4.5% increase, essentially just passing on Alcosan, it goes to $18.65 per 1,000 gallons, and the Alcosan monthly fee goes to $8.35. Of the $18.65, $6.73 stays in Bridgeville to run the Bridgeville sewer system, and then the $11.92 goes to Alcosan. Bridgeville is one of the 83 communities that are an Alcosan community, so we don't have to have our own sewer treatment plant. But Alcosan and the borough are under consent order agreements from the Allegheny County Health Department and DEP to reduce overflows, essentially, and to improve our sewer system so that we don't have surcharges in manholes, surcharges in basements. So essentially, when I say 15% of my time, there is a lot that goes into administrative of running the sewer utility because of consent orders. Going into next year, there's some improvements that are proposed. Engineering within the sewer fund, I propose $100,000 worth of sewer engineering. And Alcosan, as you can see, is going up $85,000. The big projects within the sewer fund are source reduction and repairs. We're anticipating a $200,000 lining repair project, and that will go off of essentially everything that the company that we hired at last month's council meeting to do CCTV work. We got this real nice rotation where company comes in, we broke the borough into various districts. Bridgeville connects to Alcosan. The way the borough is laid out where essentially, imagine your dam. So all your little pipes throughout the town, and then around the borough, fall in the waterways is the interceptor, and the interceptor is where all the visual pipes connect to the interceptor to take all the sewage to Alcoasand. We have, I believe, 4 or 5 points of connection to Alcoasand's interceptor. And we break down the borough into those zones, and that's what breaks into our CCTV contracts that we put out to bid. So that each year we come in and we'll do, hey, we're going to televise and inspect this zone, and then what we find in that zone of deficiencies will be the next year's point repair contract. So with the people we hired at last month's council meeting, remember the people with incredible low bid AI technologies, what they find with their inspections are going to be the lining work we do next year. So when you saw that lining work we did, like pretty much like Sarah Street and like your side of town, will be kind of a continuation.
They have 1 year off, with 4 1-year options, I forget.
No, it's just bid each year.
Oh, it is an
Because
annual.
we don't know what exactly it's going to be. Because some of that work was open cut point repairs. If you remember down on Mill Street by the dance shop, we had to dig up the street. There was areas we had to dig up the street on Willow Street. So it depends on the
So the
size.
findings in 25 would be part of your budget for 26. is that
Correct.
what you're
So
saying?
what you see for CCTV work, when we budget $75,000 for the Vector and CCTV work, that will call into what we do for point repairs for 26. So what these guys find late this year are going to be the point repairs for next year's budget. And the other big project that we've been talking about for a couple of years now is that Bridgeville, Upper St. Clair, Bethel Park was able to get a GROW grant, which is Alcoasand money to reduce infiltration into the sewer. And it called for 3 aspects. It called for a lot of work up on New York Street, which will be done next year. And then it calls for lining work this year, which we did. And then it calls for a bigger project on Baldwin Street on Baldwin Street, there's 2 sewers that run. And then once you get down from the Palpy's Playhouse, the 2 sewers kind of just go into one, and then it goes into the trunk line that goes down the creek. But there's one that's abandoned. And the goal is to reconnect the abandoned section to take a lot of that flow out of this point of connection behind the firehouse and put it into another point of connection over here so it doesn't overflow. So the engineer has done extensive study, engineering, camera work, inspection work to make sure that that's constructible. They found that it was. Alcoasand did their own, I guess, fact checking of it, and they confirmed it and was able to agree that that would be a good project that would reduce infiltration into the sewers, and they gave us a sizable GROW grant to do that. So that's planned for summer of 25 to do that project as well. So between source flow reduction and point repairs is about $700,000 worth of sewer repair work. A lot of the flow monitoring goes into what that project will consist of. And then you'll see capital purchases, $77,000. That's the price of a mini excavator machine for the Public Works Department to do some of the point repair work in the sanitary system using that piece of equipment that it can get that back to, it can't get.
Okay.
So that's
great, that we can fund that.
yeah, and that's what funds your question,
Yeah.
where that money is. So sewer funds balance budget, $2.4 million. And then if you look at the bottom line for the year-end forecast, if you look without using the fund balance, we're going to end the sewer fund in the year $40,000 in the red. So if you had to say using the fund balance, instead of originally what I asked for of using, go back one page. If you showed $399,000, we're only using $40,000 of the fund balance. So we're only using 10% of the fund balance allocation. So when I said, hey, I'm calling for a budget line item of $479,000, and I feel confident that you're not going to use that whole amount, that there's the facts to show where it would be. You can see the sewer fund has ran a sizable surplus each year that has enabled us to grow that fund balance. And that fund balance is big enough so that if you do get that very bad sewer project that wasn't budgeted for, like Center Street this year, we have a nice reserve to pay for it. And it's nice, our general fund has a very nice fund balance as well, so that there's 2 things in the general fund. You have a fund balance that kind of keeps us afloat without leaving a can loan, but it also gives us that money, like when 2018 flood happens, that may ever happen again, we decide the fund balance that it's there. And that fund balance is also healthy enough that it can fund you however tax strategy we go into the future. So sitting financially, health-wise, we're very healthy on the fund balance, that we're putting money aside each year for a rainy day. We have the flood fund that we created a couple years ago, and we put money aside for capital projects each year. So when it comes down to we're doing the right things with the people's money, saving for that awful day, we're doing the best we can, and we are. Going into the next group, which is the garbage fund. The garbage contract is a 5-year contract. Next year is year 2. It does show that we need to pass on the contract increase to the ratepayers. The contract is going up about 6-7% next year, which comes out to be a $5 increase per quarter. So if you went to, in the book, page 29 and 30, garbage rate next year will be 72, I'm sorry. It is going to be 77 a quarter, up from the $72 that we're paying right now. And that's essentially a pass-through of what the contract is. And if you remember when we did the garbage bid, we knew what that rate was going to be when we put that up on the board for the town to see, hey, this is what bad debt is, this is what all the costs are. So we knew what we were going to pay 5 years from now. It was all broken down. So we're just following that original plan. And you'll see there's about 2,051 houses that are serviced each week with garbage service. The program is going up 7%, so it has an increase of 39,000. The garbage fund is a balance fund of 638,000. Now on the expenditure side, really nothing crazy. Keeps everything status quo. Enables us to do an annual household hazardous waste event, and then we pay the brush collection program and the leaf collection program out of the garbage fund, and then it covers for the delinquent fee collection out of that. So the increase is the same, 39,000. So the fund is balanced at 638,000. Any questions on this? All right. Next project fund is your
Is there a lot of delinquent
No.
funds on, not garbage, the previous one, but,
On garbage?
yeah, we're up.
No, garbage, we're pretty good on garbage. Last cycle, we ran about a 2% delinquency rate, which is pretty good for here in-house. There was 27 people that we had to send out notices that, hey, you're 3 months in your rear. So out of 2,051, I only had 27 accounts that were 3/4 delinquent. And then after you get 3/4 delinquent, we put together a policy on delinquent garbage collection. In the past, we would end up trying to file a civil judgment against you with the magistrate, and sometimes that really wasn't effective. So essentially what we do now is once you get over 3/4, which is over $250, we give you notice that we're going to file a lien. We file a lien, and then what we do is we file a lien, close out the garbage account, start a new one, so that you got a clean booking. So it works out well. So knowing that procedure, last quarter it was only 27 people got notices, and then what we turn over to Jordan, probably half of them to lien. So at the end, that 2% is dramatically dropped. So it's really a good operation. And then on the sewer side, I met with Jordan Tax because I had questions on their sewer collection. I met with them about a month ago. I went to their office because I wanted to meet with them. And we have about $130,000 that's currently out there in delinquent sewage. So they're now going to be pushing because it kind of got.
It's almost like every other year, because I was at the meeting 2 years ago about that.
Yeah.
Once we bring it to their attention, then they try to address it.
Correct. Yes.
Is he happy with Jordan?
I
Is it acceptable? I mean, I know there's only a few out there.
am. I'm good. But it's one of those ones like, I don't know, like you guys are all business people. You know, you got the people that you can let off a leash and they do their job, and you got the people you gotta sometimes check up on, and sometimes you gotta check up on.
Yeah.
But every time I have a question, they produce reports and they follow through. So they do a very good service. And their historical context with the borough is impeccable, like, the relationship goes back 50-some years.
Right.
It's very nice that you could sit down with Bill Leonard, and he knows, oh yeah, my uncle was friends with Fred, you know, so it's kind of unique.
Yeah.
It's very valuable. All right, now going into capital project fund. There really isn't much going on with sizable capital projects next year. It shows the only revenue coming in is essentially what we have in the capital project fund itself, kind of like a savings account. And then some grant money that would be reimbursing. So grant money to reimburse for the Greg Avenue steps, the fund transfer coming in next August, and then interest. So money going into the capital project fund is about $288,000. On the expenditure side, the projects that are identified is essentially putting $200,000 towards the matched liquid fuel money to have a decent road paving project, the Greg Avenue Steps project, and the active transportation projects include the Bank Street bump outs and the Shropshire Street sidewalks. If you got follow on from $10, what that contribution would be. So if you look at the bottom line, the capital project fund shows expenditures of $1.1 million. Any questions on capital projects? And then the last fund we have is our liquid fuels fund. We use this for road paving each year. We got notice from the state that we'll receive $135,000, and they show us using that whole $135,000 for road paving. And similar to what we've been doing the past couple of years, we've had really large road paving projects for community our size. It uses the capital project funds to get more bang for our buck. So the road project will be about $336,000 next year. So liquid fuels fund is balanced in and out. And that's the liquid fuels fund. And if you would look in the back of your budget packet, you'll see the resolutions that will come on your December agenda, which approves the tax rate, which approves the budget, and which approves the sewer fee. I didn't put in here the fee resolution would be the last one that will pass along the garbage fee increase.
Is there any other fees we should look at?
No, I think the rest are fine. They're in line, or they're historically low for the betterment of our community. So it's kind of a nice budget for next year. Everyone's who identified a need. We did our best to address it. It's diligent where it's conservative in nature to hopefully run a surplus, and it doesn't raise taxes. And the budget report is very informative, where it breaks down everything in more detail than what I'm talking tonight, so that if you really didn't know too much about Bridgeville or where the tax dollars go, it's a nice narrative that tells you everything from how many street lights, how many fire plugs, how do we operate the police department. Everything is explained in detail so that the taxpayer, the visitors, the citizens know that you guys are doing what we should be doing in their best interest with public funds.
And this will be online.
Once you give me authorization to make it available for public advertisement, we typically put it on the borough website, and we put hard copies at the library and out here on the bulletin board.
You need a motion for that?
Yes, so on your agenda, after the review, if you guys have any follow-up questions or edits, and if we were all good, it would be number 2, which would be a motion to authorize advertisement, and the proposed adoption would be on December 9th, so no need for like a special meeting or anything to come back. And it sounds like there's really no need for a second budget meeting, that we're on track to move forward with that schedule.
Questions?
No, I'll just make a comment. I really appreciate the time you took, and I think that the little bits of increases here and there for some of the allocations in the borough is well spent, and applaud all your efforts, Jeff.
Thanks.
I'll make a motion to advertise.
No second. All in favor?
Aye.
get it on the advert on the website.
Work, Joe.
Yeah, as always.
Nice